Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. And if you're new here, welcome. My name is Elony'a. I'm a certified clinical hypnotherapist and a master Reiki practitioner and teacher. And I am running my very own holistic practice called Divine Minds CCHT. Now today, I want to revisit a topic that I've discussed once before on my channel, and that is soul groups. So if you've been here for a while, you may have already seen that video. If not, I highly recommend you check out that video first and come back and watch this one afterwards so we can dive a bit deeper into the understanding of soul groups. But I wanted to revisit this topic again because I'm still receiving a whole lot of questions about what a soul group is. And honestly, it is a topic that I love. I find it very fascinating. So the more I learn about it, the more I want to share. Before we begin, I always like to include a quick disclaimer whenever we're talking about something that is a spiritual concept because it can be very touchy to some. My beliefs and my perspectives may not resonate with everyone, and that is completely okay. Everyone is entitled to their own beliefs, their own thoughts, their own experiences. So I think that we can all have our own viewpoints, whether different or the same or similar, while still respecting each other's perspectives. And I also want to quickly mention that my beliefs surrounding spirituality and the afterlife are completely separate from religion. For me personally, I don't like to put religion or spirituality in a strict box. I believe both spirituality and religion are far more complex than we can fully explain or understand as human beings. So I'm simply sharing what resonates with me, what I have experience with, what I've studied about. So with all that being said, we can now talk about soul groups. Now, soul groups tie into beliefs about the afterlife and the higher spiritual realms. The idea is that when we die and we leave the physical realm, which is here, Earth, we leave our physical bodies behind. Our soul is then leaving the physical vessel, our physical body, and it is returning to the spiritual realm to continue its journey and its work. So I've learned that in many different spiritual traditions, Earth is described as something similar to a school for the soul. It is considered a plane of learning where souls come to gain experiences, develop understanding, and evolve through many different life lessons. So just like students in school, whether that be elementary, middle school, high school, we are taking different classes. We're learning different subjects. Souls are coming into different lifetimes to experience different circumstances, challenges, relationships, so that we can evolve. Now, I personally love the phrase that suggests that we come to Earth to experience, but we are all still connected as one. So from this perspective, every soul is a piece of the Creator or the universal source or God. So we are all unique expressions of the same source, experiencing life in different ways. So each of us are living, breathing, learning, and growing through our own individual journey, but still all connected as one. This is where the concept of soul groups really comes into play. A soul group is exactly what it sounds like. It is a group of souls who share a similar energetic frequency. So these are souls that tend to incarnate together repeatedly across many lifetimes, whether that be past lifetimes, current, or future. The idea is that we continue to return to Earth with many of the same souls again and again. However, the roles that we play in each lifetime are changing. So for example, this may look like someone in your current life as a parent, whether that be your mother or your father, may have been a sibling or even a close friend in another lifetime, whether that be the past or even to come in the future. Your parent could even be someone that maybe in a past lifetime, maybe in this current lifetime, or maybe in a future lifetime, you come into conflict with them. But ultimately, the idea is that the relationship changes, but the energetic familiarity between the souls remains. And the reason this is suggested to happen is because souls who share a similar frequency are evolving and learning at a similar rate. So, they are continuing to incarnate together in order to support each other's growth, development, evolution as souls. However, it is very important to note that it is also suggested and believed that soul groups are not permanent, which makes sense because if a soul begins to evolve or grow at an accelerated rate compared to others in their group, or in some cases maybe they're regressing compared to the energies and the souls in their group, that just suggests that their energetic frequency is changing, which would ultimately have to realign them with a new group. So when that happens, they may transition into a different soul group that then matches their new or current frequency. Now, this is bringing us into another interesting concept that can sometimes go misunderstood, and that is the idea of progression and regression. So from our human experience and perspective here on Earth, we have a tendency to want to label things as either good or bad, better or worse, positive, negative, right or wrong. That's just how our minds have been trained to categorize experiences. But if we're looking at things from a higher spiritual perspective, many believe that these labels don't really exist in the same way that we think they do here on Earth. So instead of deeming something as good or bad, right or wrong, experiences are viewed more as opportunities for learning, for growth, and for understanding. And remember, in no way am I undermining someone's experience through trauma, through pain. That is not to take away from their experience, but I'm simply explaining a spiritual concept. Now, if someone hears that souls can progress or regress within their soul group, they might immediately think, oh, that means someone is doing better than someone else. That's just what our mind is trained to think, and that's just not necessarily how it works. Now, from a spiritual perspective or a higher perspective, it's not at all about competition, rushing, or judgment. It is all about the experience and the evolution that we are here to learn through these lessons that we are faced with. And each soul is granted free will when they are here living a life on Earth. And free will means that we have the ability to choose how we act, how we live, how we respond to situations, how we treat others, and all of the decisions that we are making in between and throughout our lives. So every single choice that we make on a daily basis throughout our entire lifetime, whether big or small decisions, are shaping our experiences, and those experiences are then shaping the growth of our soul. We may not be able to see it in the times that we're making these decisions, but at the end of the lifetime, that is where all the growth is reflected upon, where we're actually able to see what went right, what went wrong, and how we deem right and wrong, what we learned and what we didn't learn. Some choices may move us towards greater awareness, compassion, love, connection with our most authentic, higher self, our soul self, where other choices may lead us down paths where we are repeating lessons until we eventually understand them. But again, if we're looking at these choices, these experiences from a higher perspective, they are not necessarily going to be labeled as good or bad. They are simply all about the process of learning. And like I was saying before, on Earth here, of course, we always take into account that our actions can cause harm. We don't ever want to take away that idea, because it just means that we need to hold people accountable for their actions. For example, just anything that causes harm to another individual, it needs and deserves accountability. We want to always hold someone to that standard. If we're looking from the spiritual lens, it may be understood differently. Obviously, it's still not something that is going to be approved of, but still similar to how we take in account for those actions here on Earth, where the experience or whatever caused another harm still carries consequences and lessons. But in the spiritual realm on a soul level. So that may mean, going through challenges in another lifetime to make up for the harm that you caused throughout the past lifetime. We're not really going to get too deep into that, but just knowing that our actions always have consequences here on earth and in the spiritual realm. But ultimately, the soul needs to understand the impact of its actions, learning compassion, restoring balance in future lifetimes that may have gone right over their head during the current lifetime. And this is why free will is such an important part of the human experience, because every choice that we make influences our path forward, ultimately shaping our soul's development. Now, let's talk a bit more about how soul groups function within our lives. Now, it's often suggested that many of the people that we encounter throughout our lives, from the very beginning to the very end, are actually members of our soul group. So this may include family members, friends, partners, mentors, teachers, co-workers, or even people that we have challenging or oppositional relationships with in some way, shape, or form. In fact, sometimes the most difficult relationships that we experience may be some of the most important ones for our soul's growth and evolution. And these souls may be appearing in different roles across multiple lifetimes, helping us to learn different lessons through each lifetime. For example, maybe you have someone who is your sibling during this current lifetime, but in another lifetime, whether that be the past or in the future, they may appear as a partner or even a parent or someone that you may be experiencing a lot of challenges with, someone who challenges you to help you evolve. But the energetic connection between the souls remains. Now, this is where the idea of soul groups also plays into the idea of soulmates and karmic relationships. Soulmates are often described as individuals who we share a deep, positive connection with across multiple lifetimes. Now, these relationships tend to feel very familiar, very supportive, and they naturally align us with the positive things within our lives, helping us to heal, helping us out of challenging times in our life. And many people believe that soulmates may have soul contracts, meaning that before incarnating into lifetimes, they agree to meet again and again in certain lifetimes to help each other grow and evolve. But just as important as soulmate relationships, we also have karmic relationships. There has to be duality. So, karmic relationships can be much more challenging. They're often involving intense emotions, repeated patterns, or lessons that push us outside of our comfort zone. Now, these are the relationships that usually involve conflict, but they lead to things such as growth, forgiveness, learning about boundaries, and learning more about self-worth, because we oftentimes have to, step into these things to overcome these karmic relationships once and for all. And even though karmic relationships are viewed and really are difficult, they serve important purpose in helping us to evolve spiritually. We can't just evolve through all the positive soulmate connections. We also have to evolve through challenge. After all, if every relationship in our life was easy and perfect, we would not grow. Sometimes, or most times, it's the challenges that give us the most valuable lessons through real life experiences. And, learning about soulmates and karmic relationships is also something that comes up a lot during past life regression sessions. So during these past life regression sessions, clients oftentimes recognize energies that are appearing in different roles through past lifetimes. For example, this may be someone who is their mother in a current lifetime. They're appearing as a close friend or a partner in another lifetime. Or a sibling may appear as a parent or a friend, or even someone of the opposite gender within this past lifetime. But, like I suggested earlier, the soul remains the same. The roles are just changing. And past life regression is a tool that can really help individuals recognize these energetic patterns and understand why certain relationships within their life feel so familiar, significant, or challenging. But ultimately, when we bring it back to the idea of soul groups, it just reminds us of a few powerful things. First, it's reminding us that the people who are entering our lives at different points in our lives are usually not random. Even if we feel like we haven't met them yet, you may still feel energetically like this person feels very familiar. I know them, but I've never met them. And that could be because this is an individual within your soul group who you have shared journeys with across multiple lifetimes. Whether they're showing up as a stranger, as someone you end up having a karmic relationship with, or someone who you have a soulmate connection with. Time will tell. Now, number 2, the idea of soul groups also reinforces the idea that relationships, either positive or challenging, can serve a deeper purpose in our growth, in our evolution, whether we realize it or not. And number 3, I think this is the most comforting of all, but soul groups also brings us that realization that the connections that we're forming with people during this current lifetime, we are not actually separate from them, or we don't leave them or they don't leave us, like through the example of death, where we fear that we'll never see somebody again. That is not true if you believe in soul groups or past life regression and reincarnation, because ultimately we will connect again with this soul and likely live and meet again through lifetimes. So the souls that we love and that we learn from may cross our paths again and again as we continue evolving together, whether that's soul contracts that we've signed for being karmic relationships, soulmate relationships, or just someone within your soul group. Now, if you're interested in learning more about soul groups or past life regression, you can find me on social media at Divine Minds CCHT, where I am usually posting very similar content. But if you're interested in experiencing a past life regression session for yourself, you can visit my website at divinemindsccht.com. You can learn more, or you can book your first session with me. Now we've reached the end, so I want to thank you all for joining me today in this very fascinating topic and exploring these ideas with me. I hope you all join me again next time. Bye!